The rain came to Storm's End like an old friend returning after too many seasons abroad. Silver sheets blown sideways by the gales that rolled in from Shipbreaker Bay. It drummed upon the green-black sea, hissed against the merlons, and seeped through cracked slate into forgotten passages where oath-ridden ghosts still kept watch. Jon Snow felt the damp in every joint of his patched leather jerkin as he climbed the worn steps to the ramparts, Ghost padding at his heel. He had known bitter winds upon the wall and iron-cold mists in the haunted forest, yet somehow the storm of the Stormlands tasted different, saltier, as though mingled with the blood of centuries. Gren would have hated these heights, Jon thought. Poor Gren, who had once joked that if the Seven ever wanted to vex him, they would make him a lord with a keep on a cliff. Gren was gone, burned upon a pyre in the shadow of broken then shields, and Jon carried him now as he carried so many others. Every death was another stone in the invisible tower that pressed upon his shoulders and would forever grow, higher than Storm's End, higher than the wall. He paused at the parapet. Below, the courtyard churned with banners that snapped and twisted in the wind. The three-headed dragon of Targaryen, black and red. The golden sun spear of Nymeros Martell. The pale argent tower of Dane atop a field of violet. New banners, new allies. And at the courtyard center, ringed by a dozen gold-trimmed knights of the Golden Company, stood the young man who styled himself Aegon, the sixth of his name. They called him Griff once, Jon reminded himself. Now they call him King. The boy, no, the young man, was still half-soaked from the rain, dark hair plastered to his brow as he conferred with Sir Raleigh Duckfield over a parchment map. When Jon looked upon him, he felt the cold hands of fate tightening around them both. For a moment he imagined Maester Aemon's blind eyes gleaming with quiet pride. Aegon, the prince that was promised, and heard Melisandre's voice whispering of a sword drawn from living fire. But the storm stole the vision away. A footstep sounded behind him. "You'll catch chill," said Sir Davos Seaworth, tugging his cloak closer about a shoulder still stiff from the white harbor arrow that had nearly killed him. Storm's End winds cut like a reaver's blade. Jon managed half a smile. "I thought smuggler's blood ran hot. Too hot by half. Which is why I know when to be inside near a hearth." Davos leaned forward, eyes narrowing upon the bustle in the yard. "He's restless. Ships in the bay, lords at his table, but all he can smell is King's Landing beyond the Blackwater. Reminds me of Stannis, restless ruins kings almost as fast as cowardice." "Meereen?" Jon wrapped his fingers around cold stone. He might still win the realm without another field of corpses. Lord Connington claims half the Storm Lords will join if their knees are given a gentle bend rather than a break. Connington sees bent knees wherever he looks. Davos exhaled. "But steel decides crowns, and our young dragon would press on. He means to march as soon as the whistling winds shift." "Ma'am?" "Ow." Jon felt the weight of the communion they had shared the night before. Aegon's quiet offer, Connington's stern approval, the hush in the ruined banquet hall, where they had once heard the laughter of Baratheons. "Be my hand, Jon Snow." In those words, Jon had heard the ragged heartbeat of duty resurrected, and the ghosts of friends who had died believing in honor. Ghost nuzzled against his thigh, crimson eyes searching. Jon scratched behind the ear where the fur curled white as winter wheat. "I will speak to him again," he said at last. "Aegon must understand that the realm he wishes to rescue will not survive another dance of dragons." Davos tugged at the scruff of his beard. "And if he will not be swayed, then I will steer him," Jon did not say. Instead, he turned from the wall and started down the steps, the direwolf flowing beside him like living snow. The great hall of Storm's End had once held 7 colossal statues of the Seven. Time and Murder had toppled 3, and the others loomed cracked and groaning in the flicker of torches. Aegon Targaryen stood at the foot of the father's shattered plinth, its iron crown dangling askew in his hand. When he saw Jon, he lifted it with a rueful twist of the lips. "The realm's father frowns on me, Lord Snow," he said. "I was never the dutiful son Rhaegar envisioned, not after all those years upon the summer sea." Jon recalled the tales Griff had told aboard the Shy Maiden, The false decks and whispered names. The assassin's blade meant for a babe in swaddling. The years in exile with bought tutors and borrowed customs. I never knew my own father, John answered, stepping into the torchlight. At least, not truly. You knew something of him. His presence, however distant. Aegon touched the cracked stone where the father's stern visage should have been. I knew only stories, and even those changed with each passing season. One day I was a cygnet destined for a swan's flight. The next a falcon doomed never to fly at all. It was Griff who gave me wings. And now, you would soar too swiftly, John said softly. Aegon met his gaze. Too slowly, and the realm bleeds anew. The usurper's spawn sits uneasy upon a throne he cannot keep. Cersei Lannister will devour him the moment she claws free of her grief. The reach is burned, the riverlands drowned, and winter rides from the north on dead horses. Would you have me wait until the last hope gutters? Ben Dawal. John tasted ash upon his tongue. He had seen those dead horses. I would have you rule a realm that can still stand beneath your banner. Which is why I need a hand I can trust. Aegon's eyes, strikingly Valyrian violet, did not waver. Not a sellsword grown fat on plunder, nor an exiled lord chasing ghosts of glory. Someone who knows what it is to bear the lives of many upon shoulders not yet grown broad. Someone untainted by the Southron's endless webs. He drew a slow breath. Someone who has faced the darkness beyond our ken, and yet believes the living may prevail. John felt the hall contract until only the two of them and the yawning idol of the father remained. Above, rain hammered the roof like 1,000 drums heralding war. I failed once, he thought. Failed at Hardhome, failed at the Wall, failed at Winterfell, and paid the price in blood and scars. Yet here, in the storm's dark heart, duty called anew. If I accept, John said, we do this my way. We court allies with words before swords. We weave a peace the small folk may survive, and together we will carve a path of justice through the rot. Aegon replied, voice scarcely above a whisper. Swear it, Jon Snow. Swear you will be my hand, and I will swear to heed your counsel like a son his father's. He extended the iron crown of the father, as though offering something more sacred than forged steel. Jon reached out, and in that instant, he felt again the chill of the wall, the raw scent of weirwood sap, the call of direwolves in moonlit woods. But here stood a different world, and he could not flee from it. His fingers closed around the crown's jagged rim. I will serve, he said. But know this, no throne, no crown, no ancient prophecy will matter if the Night's King rides south. You must prepare the realm for that war, or all else will crumble to dust. Aegon lowered his head. Then let the hand's first labor be to bind east and west, south and north, blood and ice. Together we will brave the storm. Benderand. By dawn the rains eased enough for the fleet at anchor to raise tattered sails. Ravens burst from the rookery, wings slick with drizzle, bearing messages sealed with three-headed wax. Summons to lords sworn and unsworn. Pleas to maesters whose chains might yet hold the realm's knowledge from drowning. Jon dispatched his own raven to the wall, a parchment folded thrice upon itself, addressed to Lord Commander Ed Tollett. The North remembers. Winter is here. Send word of the dead's march. He wondered if Dolorous Eddie would laugh at the grim tidings or merely sigh and fetch another candle in the dark. Connington arrived at the strategy table an hour past sunrise. His red-rimmed eyes betrayed a night spent pacing ramparts and retracing the ghosts of Robert's rebellion. The Marcher Lords stir, he reported. A few tongues wagged that the boy is but another pretender, yet most fear Lannister retribution more than Targaryen return. If we seize Crow's Nest by week's end, the Massies will bend the knee and half the Stormlands with them. Jon studied the painted map. But if blood spills along Massey's Hook, it will spill again on the King's Road. And we cannot spare swords for dead men and women while the North freezes. Connington's brow furrowed. A hand already and wary of war. You sound like Rhaegar in council, ever seeking a tourney song over the clash of steel. Yet something like approval flickered in his gaze. but the realm listens when swords speak. We must win a victory bold enough to shake the Iron Throne before Queen Cersei strangles her own son. Jon tapped the map where Blackwater Rush met the sea. Then let the victory be hearts, not corpses. The Stormlords loved the Baratheons, because the stag fought their foes and drank their ale. Show them a dragon who feasts at their tables, and they will follow him on roads of stone, not rivers of blood. Connington exhaled through his nose. Words are wind, Lord Snow, even when blown by the north. So are banners, Jon replied, until men choose to follow them. A silence settled. At last Connington traced a finger along the coast. East to Wendwater, south by road to Harvest Hall, then north to Haystack Hall. No castles gutted, no small folk slain. A slow march, but one that fills our ranks instead of our graveyards. He looked up. Would that satisfy the hand? Jon inclined his head. We will see if it satisfies the king. When Aegon entered the hall, clad in a brigandine of midnight leather stitched with red dragons, he carried himself with the poise of men twice his years. Yet Jon saw the tension in the set of his jaw, the way his gloved fingers curled unconsciously whenever Connington mentioned King's Landing. Still, the council remained civil. Each objection weighed like a smith's hammer upon an anvil. And by the fourth candle's demise, they had an accord. The young king would ride forth beneath banners of peace, offering pardon and protection to any Stormlord who bent the knee, justice to those who ravaged the weak, and a listening ear to the common folk who had seen too many columns of iron-shod knights darken their doorways. It was a fragile plan, as all plans were, but Jon felt the stir of hope, slender as a newborn direwolf, yet alive. 3 days later, the host rode from Storm's End. The Golden Company marched at the vanguard, elephants stamping through mud that swallowed lesser beasts to the belly. Behind came the Dornish outriders, cloaks of sand gold whipping like desert banners in the sea wind. Jon rode near the king's right hand, his black cloak clasped with a simple bronze wolf-head brooch fashioned by a Stormland smith, too humble for castles. Ghost loped beside the column, pale as morning fog, drawing murmurs from soldiers who had never seen a direwolf, and whispers from those who remembered ancient Stark legends. At times Jon glimpsed the uncertainty upon Aegon's face as the small folk peered from hovels, clutching children thin as winter hares. They watched the shining host, with a wary awe of field mice spying hawks overhead, unsure whether they would bring grain or beaks. Jon urged the boy to halt, often. Dismount. Speak, listen. And Aegon did. He knelt in muddy lanes to comfort a farmer whose sons were pressed into Lord Merton's levies. He ordered grain wagons unsealed to feed a hamlet struck by autumn blight. He left a purse of silver at a sept to bury 5 women slain by sellswords fleeing the reach. Each act cooled fears like gentle rain on smoldering embers. But word traveled swifter than couriers. In King's Landing, Queen Cersei's hold upon power cracked. Some said Sir Jaime had vanished beyond the Trident. Others that Tommen's young heart grew ill at the horrors wrought in his mother's name. The Sparrow High Septon spoke of 7-forged justice, while the Iron Bank whispered of debts yet unpaid. All the realm trembled. One night, as campfires painted the glade orange beneath storm-torn clouds, Jon found Aegon seated upon a stump, a steaming bowl of onion stew forgotten in his lap. "They love you," the young king murmured as Jon approached. "More than I deserve." "They love what you might be," Jon corrected gently. He sat upon the damp grass, Ghost curling beside him. "One day, that love will falter. Some will turn away, others will curse your name. Remember tonight, when that hour comes." Then if Samati. Aegon's breath misted in the chill. "Did they love you at Castle Black?" Jon stared into the flames, seeing snow-swept ramparts and black cloaks drifting like ravens on the wind. "Some did. Some hated me. In the end, it did not matter. The memory of daggers in the dark still ached beneath his ribs. Do what is right, even when right makes enemies. That is the burden of command." Thunder muttered far off, low as a lion's growl. Aegon placed the bowl aside and laced his fingers. Griff thinks you are more Stark than Snow. I am the blood of Eddard Stark, Jon said. Yet I was never his heir. Winterfell belongs to Sansa now. The North to whomever the lords choose to follow. My name is Snow, or will you grant me another? Aegon lifted his gaze. Names are more than letters. I would not demand you forsake your own. But there are lords who would deny you authority as bastard. A faint smile touched his lips. Suppose I were to name you Lord Jon Stark of Winterfell, Warden of the North, Hand of the King. Jon felt the memory of icy towers rise within him, cracking hearths, great wolves upon the battlements, laughter of siblings now scattered by war. Winterfell is burned, its people dead or fled. A name will not rebuild its walls. No, Aegon agreed. But perhaps a crown that listens to the North might. Jon traced the direwolf brooch. If you would claim fealty from the North, you will need more than parchment. You must ride beyond the neck, look Ned's bannermen in the eye, and speak of the dead who march. Nannerwander. Aegon nodded slowly. When King's Landing is ours, you have my oath. I will ride north before I don the crown. If King's Landing is ours, Jon thought. Yet he said only, then I will hold you to it. Crow's Nest fell without a single sword swung in anger. Lord Massey emerged upon the battlements to find a white direwolf staring up at him like the ghost of some ancient Stark vengeance. He bent the knee before the king's banner and offered 300 men-at-arms, plus ships enough to bear half the host up the Wendwater. At Harvest Hall, Lady Selwyn Tarth greeted the company beneath a sky of drifting gulls, and insisted they rest upon her island holdfast. Sir Davos remarked that the Tarth kitchens roasted the best onions in all the 7 kingdoms. Jon agreed after tasting 2 bowls, and seeing Aegon laugh for the first time in days. Yet not all pledged fealty with smiles. At Haystack Hall, Lord Errol's sons barred the gates and loosed quarrels upon the Golden Company outriders. Jon urged caution, Connington demanded a battering ram. Before steel met wood, Aegon strode alone to the gatehouse, and spoke of oaths sworn by Errols to House Baratheon, of storms weathered together when dragons last ruled. He swore that no man would hang for fearing false kings. After a tense hour, the drawbridge creaked downward, and Lord Errol's eldest yielded his sword, tears streaking mud upon his cheeks. Words, Jon thought, could still trump blades, but storms gather as surely as crows. Raven after raven landed on Jon's gauntlet in those weeks, each bearing darker news from the Riverlands and the Reach. The winds whispered of Queen Margaery imprisoned, of Tarly men harrowing villages loyal to Highgarden, of Ironborn reavers raiding the Shield Islands. Most dire came the Northern Raven, last hearth fallen, Umber slain. The dead broke Eastwatch at full moon. Hold the neck. Burn the bodies. No seal, only the desperate scrawl of a steward named Eric Snow. Jon read it thrice beneath the lantern's trembling light, heart hammering like the drums of Mance Raiders' wildling march. He found Aegon in a pavilion, shadowed by candlelight, and stacks of appeals from lords he had never met. The North is in peril, Jon said without preamble, and laid the parchment before him. Eastwatch has fallen. If the dead hold the coast, the wall's flank is broken. They will sweep south as the tide. Aegon drew a slow breath. We are still a fortnight from the capital. Jon's voice grew hard. Understand, King's Landing can burn 10 times and rise again in brick and mortar. If the dead wash over the neck, there will be no realm left to rule. Connington, summoned by the commotion, folded his arms. The Night's Watch has stood for 8,000 years. A single post lost does not doom us. Jon shot him a glare cold as frostbite. Men once said the wall would never fall. Now its garrison numbers less than 1,000. Fewer still wield Valyrian steel. Aegon closed his eyes. If I abandon the Stormlands now, lords who waver will rally to the Lannisters. The war could last years. Nentau. Years we do not have, Jon answered. Every corpse they slay will rise to join them. Winter will devour our armies before we ever see the trident. Silence. Only the rain's soft patter upon canvas remained. At length, Aegon opened his eyes. What would you have me do, my hand? John hesitated. The question tasted like ice and iron. Send riders to Winterfell, White Harbor, River Run, any house with men to spare. Call the banners not in rebellion but in survival. He met the king's gaze. Ride for King's Landing still, but strike not to burn Cersei's holdfast. Cut the head from the viper quickly. Depose her, seize the city, levy grain and arms for the march north. Then we turn and face the true enemy together. Bah! Connington bristled. A war on two fronts is folly. A war on one front is fantasy, John replied. The dead do not parley, and they will not wait. Aegon's fingers drummed upon the table. Very well. His voice steadied. A king's decree. We break from Haystack Hall at dawn. The Golden Company sails upriver to garrison Maidenpool and secure the Roserad. Sir Davos will sail south with Massey's fast galleys to treat with Tarth and secure grain. Lord Connington leads the main host to Duskendale. I will accompany John and a vanguard to the Blackwater, under banners of truce. There we will parley with Queen Cersei, if she dares. If not, we strike before the city walls can brace. He rose. And when the capital falls, we ride north as the storm itself. John heard the murmur of approval that rippled through the pavilion. Yet in the flicker of candlelight he saw fear behind Aegon's violet eyes, not fear of swords or wildfire, but of shadowed shapes with eyes like cold moons. John placed a hand upon the boy's shoulder. You will not face it alone. Neither of us will. Ghost howled beyond the canvas, an eerie, resonant note that carried across the camp and into the weeping pines beyond. Soldiers shuddered at the sound, clutching talismans. John stroked the hilt of Longclaw where the silver wolf's head gleamed pale. We ride to darkness, he thought, but perhaps the dawn yet waits beyond. The Blackwater smelled of smoke and rot, long before its waters glimmered in torchlight, a stench that clung to sails and armor, seeping into the soul. When the vanguard crested the ridge above the Windwater Fork, King's Landing lay sprawled like a slumbering beast, its towers crowned in dull gold, under a waning moon. Fires guttered in Fleabottom, and the great domes of the Sept of Baelor shimmered faintly where scaffolds bore silent witness to destruction, unchecked. John studied the looming mass of the Red Keep. Somewhere within, Tommen Baratheon, barely a boy, slept under the shadow of a mother crowned in thorns of paranoia. Would Cersei parley? Or had the whispers proven true, that the queen had unleashed Qyburn's alchemists upon the sewers, willing to set the whole city alight before bending the knee to any dragon? He recalled Tyrion's words on the wall long ago. King's Landing is a pit, and every man in it is a snake or a rat. The pit now teetered on oblivion, and Jon Snow carried in his breast a flame that must not gutter. Aegon turned to him in the pre-dawn hush. Do you smell that? Death, Jon answered, though the night breeze bore only ash. A city dying by inches. Not if we can save it. The young king drew in breath as if to steel himself. Come the hour, I will remember your counsel. Jon clasped his forearm. And I, yours. Then horns sounded. Low, mournful notes that drifted like specters across the river. From the city walls answered a shriller cry. Bells, not of welcome but alarm. Torches blossomed along battlements, and shadows raced. Aegon's silver-edged cloak billowed behind him as he mounted. The war elephant bearing the king's standard lifted its trunk and bellowed into the night. Jon swung astride his destrier, Longclaw cold against his thigh. Ghost bounded ahead, white against dark stone. As the first arms of dawn brushed the horizon gold, the hand of the king led his vanguard toward the Blackwater Ford, not to conquer, but to reclaim a realm before winter's endless night could claim them all. So began the hand's march. Wah, ka. The Blackwater's muddy shallows clung to hooves and greaves alike, a sucking mire that dragged men toward the river's hungry belly. Jon urged his destrier forward, letting the beast pick each step with wary power, while Ghost darted along the embankment in bursts of pale fury, white against night-drenched reeds, red eyes ever scanning. Behind Jon, 500 hand-picked riders advanced in wedge formation. 50 Golden Company veterans under Sir Raleigh Duckfield, 40 Dornish scouts with sand silk cloaks tied tight against the chill. The rest a mix of Stormlander bowmen and lupine guards sworn to Jon himself. Hard-eyed Northmen who had ridden south under Umber and Karstark banners. Before those banners were buried, they crossed without trumpet or drum. Only the faint slosh of water against leather and the dull clink of steel joined the early dawn chorus. Far ahead the city walls loomed, stony giants crowned in crenellations and flickering watchfires. The Gate of the Gods. Once a proud portal of whitewashed stone, now stood scarred and scorched where wildfire from Stannis' assault had licked at its arch. 2 enormous iron-bound doors remained fastened. On the parapets above, lanterns bobbed as sentries hurried to and fro, voices drifting across the dark like the clamor of uneasy ghosts. Jon raised his fist. The column halted. He drew a black-fletched arrow from the quiver at his back, tied a scrap of pale linen to its shaft, and passed it to Sir Jeremy Riker. The archer's bow creaked. The arrow hissed skyward, tracing silver through the wan light before thudding into the gate's oaken lintel. A banner of parley, white in the rising dawn, fluttered there. Moments stretched. From the battlements a red lantern dipped once, twice, thrice. Then torches angled inward. Chains rattled within. The huge doors groaned open upon a throat of shadow wide enough for 3 horsemen abreast. Beyond waited a score of gold cloaks in tarnished breastplates, helms plumed with yellow horsehair dimmed by soot, spears raised, faces set and wary. Jon dismounted. He left Longclaw sheathed, but kept one gloved hand upon the direwolf pommel as he stepped across the threshold. Davos followed, tugging his cloak about him, then a pair of unarmed Golden Company knights bearing the king's banner. Ghost. Ghost slipped past Jon's heel, hackles bristling, low growl rumbling in his throat. The gold cloaks flinched, muttering. Jon laid a steadying palm on the direwolf's ruff. A captain in a dented half-helm strode forward. Declare yourselves. Jon Snow, hand to King Aegon Targaryen. Jon's voice rang in the archway. We come under flag of parley, by the laws of gods and men. Take us to your queen. Murmurs rippled down the line of guards. The captain swallowed. Lord Hand. His Grace Tommen reigns. Queen Cersei sits the regency. Then take me to Regent Cersei, Jon replied, tone flat as winter stone. We would settle crowns before winter settles us all. The captain hesitated, gaze darting to Ghost's fangs, to Davos' weathered face, to the black dragon banner unfurling in the dawn breeze. At length, he nodded and gestured. The gold cloaks parted, spears lowering to flank the visitors down a torch-lit tunnel that stank of damp straw and old fear. They emerged into Cobbler's Square, its cobbles slick with last night's drizzle. The hour was early, yet already hungry smallfolk gathered by the bread queues. Thin women clutching woven baskets, grimy children huddled beneath fraying cloaks, bent men coughing river fog from their lungs. At the sight of the direwolf, a gasp rippled. At the banners, another, curiosity sparring with dread. Jon met their eyes when he could, nodding once, hoping some spark of reassurance might leap the gulf between a stranger's promise and a peasant's despair. No bells rang to herald their passage. Instead, whisper waves lapped along streets as butchers' boys yelled up alley ladders. Bakers' wives pressed flower-whitened palms to mouths, and beggars with fingerless gloves crossed themselves. The dragons come, Jon heard a toothless man croak. Aegon returned. But fear devoured hope faster than crows devour carrion. And for every mutter of welcome, 2 more hissed traitor, pretender, witch wolf. At Street of Steel, 3 lines of Lannister men blocked the way. Red cloaks bright as spilled blood against the gray. Their captain bore gilded pauldrons etched with prancing lions, but lacked the polish of a knight. Eyes ringed in sleepless red, jaw shadowed. No farther, he barked, hand tightening on sword hilt. Queen's orders. Davos stepped forward, palms open. Sir, we bear parley writ. The sword hissed free. To the dungeons with you, parleys ended when your elephants landed on Crackclaw. Crossbows clicked behind him. Ghosts snarled. Jon heard bowstrings creak behind his own men. He lifted one gauntleted hand. Silence fell, thick as gravelime. "Tell your queen," Jon said, voice low but sharp as drawn steel, "that when winter's dead walk her streets, they will not heed her orders either. Let us pass, we bargain for every living soul inside these walls, including yours." The captain's sword wavered. Sweat beaded his temple, though the wind bit cold. He glanced at the red-eyed direwolf, at the dirt-starved faces peering from shop doors, at the gold cloaks shifting behind Jon's party with unease. Finally he sheathed. "Forward then. But the Red Keep decides your fate." Men Norwal. Up Aegon's high hill, the cobbles turned to marble, the rot-sweet stink of flea-bottom giving way to incense drifting from septs whose glass windows still glittered despite missing panes. Guards thickened. Lannister halberdiers in serried ranks, crossbowmen poised along balconies, glowering kettleblacks leaning upon pikes. And there, atop the wide stairs before Maegor's Holdfast, waited Sir Qyburn, lank hair plastered by mist, robes blacker than crowwing, eyes bright with impish amusement. "Lord Snow," he purred. "And the Onion Lord. How the tides of fortune deliver flotsam to my shore." Menderho. Davos grimaced. "Tides wash away filth as well." Qyburn's smile sharpened. "Perhaps, yet, some refuse clings to stone." He turned, beckoning. "Her Grace awaits." Jon followed the necromancer through doors tall as river oaks, ghosting past towering Kingsguard statues whose marble blades caught dawn light like pale flame. In the throne room, the Iron Throne loomed jagged, a crown of cold iron kissed crimson by stained glass sunrise. But Cersei did not sit upon those blades. She stood before them instead, hair shorn to golden fuzz, cheeks hollower than rumor whispered, black gown dripping beads like morning tears. Beside her perched King Tommen on a low seat of polished cedar, eyes wide, hands trembling around surpounce clutched to his chest. "Your direwolf offends my throne room." Cersei said without greeting, "Remove the beast or remove yourselves." Ghost bared teeth. Jon stroked his ruff once, then motioned. The direwolf padded to the hall's side, never breaking gaze with the queen. "Speak." Cersei folded arms. "I have war to plan." Jon inclined his head. "We come to end war. Your Grace House Targaryen claims the crown by blood older than Baratheon oaths, yet it offers peace, Tommen's safety, a queen's dignity, amnesty for lords who set aside swords and pledged to King Aegon." Cersei laughed, a brittle chime slicing the quiet. "Amnesty? Dignity? Another Targaryen child promises honey while dragons scorch cities. I have seen this play. I know its ending." "You see only endings you fear," Jon replied. "See another. The city spared, your son unthreatened, the realm united against winter's true foe." She eyed him as a falcon eyes a hare. "You want my son's crown. We want his loyalty." Jon gestured toward Tommen. "He keeps his titles, his lands, his household. He lives. All your children live, if you heed reason." Tommen's lower lip trembled. He glanced to his mother, hope glimmering like a star glimpsed through storm cloud. Cersei's knuckles whitened on her sleeves. "Aegon sends a bastard to treat with a queen. Insult enough to warrant blood." "I was raised a bastard," Jon said evenly. "Not born one." Rhaegar Targaryen was wed to Lyanna Stark in secret. Their son Aegon lives. You know well how the realm treats children of prophecy. Cersei's eyes flickered. Fear, surprise. Something darker roiling beneath. Qyburn leaned, whispering near her ear. She listened, lips thinning. "Spare the lies. Lyanna was abducted, defiled. Spare the pretense." Jon stepped closer, boots ringing upon stone. "Rhaegar loved her. Robert's wrath forged your crown from murder, but war need not swallow another generation." The silence that followed stretched taut. Torches crackled. Outside, Gulls shrieked. Finally Cersei whispered, "If I yield, the faith will flay me. The lords will tear me apart piece by piece. Yield, and you may yet walk away." Davos' voice gentled. "The realm forgets queens when winter bites. Take Lannisport. Watch your son grow. Let peace grow with him." Qyburn cleared his throat. "A charming fantasy. Alas, her grace must consider contingencies." At his subtle nod, a small door opened behind the dais. Out shuffled a hunched figure swathed in gray robes, a septon at first glance, until light caught steel beneath sleeves, a hidden gauntlet, whirring pins, glinting gears. "Sir Robert Strong," Qyburn announced, pride swelling. "A silent knight to guard the crown." Jon's breath iced. The figure removed hood. A pale helm with visor sealed, no living eyes within, yet a faint hiss of breathless lungs echoed. Jaime's face flashed before Jon, one-handed, broken, yet still human. This thing radiated unlife. Qyburn's monster. "Winter's foe already stands among us," Davos muttered. Jon felt rage coil. He forced calm. Even silent knights fall to steel. And to fire. He fixed Qyburn with a stare. "You risk all for pride." Cersei raised her chin. "And what would you risk, bastard wolf, for a crown not yours?" Jon thought of dead brothers, of Ygritte's last breath, of Lyanna Mormont's fierce eyes as the young girl pledged the North. "Everything," he answered, "but not the innocent." He turned to Tommen. "Your Grace, would you see your city burn for pride?" The boy's lips parted, no sound emerged. Tears welled. Cersei's hand tightened on his shoulder. "My son will not be swayed by traitors." "Then let him speak," Jon urged. "Tommen, look at your people. Ask them if they want more war." The candlelit chamber seemed to shrink. Tommen swallowed. "Mother," he whispered, "the people suffer. Sir Meryn says bread riots claimed 9. Lies." Cersei snapped, though color drained from her cheeks. "Our enemies sow discord." Jon knelt, meeting Tommen's gaze. "I was Lord Commander of 1,000 men sworn to die for realms of men. I learned that crowns alone win no loyalty. Deeds do. You can save them, Your Grace. Bend the knee beside your mother. Keep her safe. Join us against winter." "Nonsense." Cersei's breath came sharp. "Tommen, you will stand." The boy looked from Jon to his mother, to the Iron Throne. He straightened slowly, cheeks streaked wet. Words trembled forth. I would meet King Aegon. Hear him. For the realm." A single heartbeat of stillness, and then Cersei slapped him. The sound cracked like splitting ice. Tommen reeled. Sir Pounce screeched, leapt from his arms. Every guard started. Ghost's howl exploded, echoing in vaulted rafters. Crossbows swung out. Jon rose, fury blazing. Cersei backed, eyes wild. "Enough," Jon growled. "Strike him again, and you lose every scrap of mercy." Cersei's lips curled. "Mercy is weakness. Mercy is strength," Davos countered. "And you've none left." Qyburn lifted a hand. Sir Robert Strong lumbered forward, gauntlet flexing. Jon's fingers closed on Longclaw's hilt. But before steel left scabbard, a horn's blast boomed outside, deep and resonant. Another followed. Higher, urgent. Shouts erupted beyond the doors, iron clenched. A tremor shook the hall as if some great weight struck stone. Cersei's eyes flicked to Qyburn. He frowned. "Not our signal." A Lannister runner burst through side doors, breathless. "Your Grace, Flea Bottom is rising. The bells, they ring the king's mercy. Targaryen banners in the streets. Gold cloaks defecting." Cersei paled. "Defecting?" "Half the city's watch marched for the Dragon Gate at dawn. They've opened it. Thousands pour in." Jon exhaled. Aegon. The boy had timed the feint to the moment. Davos galleys along the river, Connington's men pressing the Roserad, and Aegon himself riding with 3,000 to the city's eastern gates under banners of bread and forgiveness. Word had spread on wings swifter than ravens. The young dragon came not to burn but to feed. Now the city roused itself, not in fear but in frantic, desperate hope. Cersei's jaw tightened. Traitors, she whirled. Qyburn, ignite the vaults. No. Tommen's voice rose, thin but firm. He stepped before her. No more fire. I won't. Cersei shoved him aside. You are a child. I am your king, Tommen cried. In that instant, Jon saw choice balanced on a knife edge. He shouted, Guards of the Red Keep, stand for your king. Confusion rippled through the ranks. Some Lannister men glared at Jon. Others stared at Tommen's tear-bright eyes. One by one, a handful knelt. Helms lowered, spears rested. The silent night advanced, looming. Jon slid Longclaw free. Valyrian steel flashed. Call it off, Qyburn, or this abomination falls first. Qyburn's tongue flicked over lips. Sir Robert, protect the queen. The thing lunged. Ghost leapt with feral roar. Claws scrabbling steel plate as they crashed to marble. Fangs seeking purchase where flesh should be, and found none. Jon met the monster's downward strike, steel shattering the air. Blades screamed against gauntlet. Sparks showered ghost-pale fur. The corpse knight's strength jarred bones and Jon's arm. He sidestepped a blow aimed to crush skull, pivoted, drove Longclaw into the gap beneath gorget. The blade bit, yet no gout of blood followed, only a wheeze of stale air. The thing staggered, unfeeling. Crossbows twanged. A Dornish scout skewered the corpse through thigh. An Onion knight's axe split kneecap. It buckled but rose again. Qyburn's eyes shone. It cannot die, Lord Snow. Jon's pulse pounded. He recalled the whites north of the wall. White as hoarfrost, empty eyes blazing blue, silent save for the screech of ice. Those fell to dragonglass. And fire. He shouted, Torches, burn it! Davos seized a wall sconce, flung it. Flame blossomed on oiled cloak, draped across the monster's shoulders. It flailed, arms windmilling, setting tapestries alight. Smoke billowed. Guards retreated coughing. Ghost bounded clear as the silent night crashed to one knee, armor glowing dull red beneath greedy tongues of fire. At last it toppled sideways, burning like putrid pyre. Cersei stared, horror dawning. Qyburn, stop them. But Jon was already moving. Sword leveled. Gold cloaks stormed through the main doors behind him, led by their commander, the same captain who had wavered at Street of Steel. Red Keep's ours, my lord, he called. City wants the dragon boy. Cersei's face warped. She snatched a dagger from her belt, lunged for Tommen. Jon intercepted. Steel ringing on steel, tore the blade free. She reeled, eyes blazing hate. You steal my son. I save him, Jon said. He sheathed Longclaw, lifted Tommen gently. Come, your grace. Let us meet your cousin. Then guards encircled Cersei, weapons lowered. She sank to her knees, gown pooling like an oil-slick shadow. Qyburn slipped backward, but Dornish spears blocked the way. The necromancer bowed, defeated. When Jon emerged into the courtyard, dawn had fully broken, washing ramparts in pale gold. The air buzzed with raw astonishment. City Watch and Golden Company mingling, small folk cheering from balconies, dozens of Stormlanders handing out barley bread from broken wagons. And at the center, mounted on a dark gray courser, sat Aegon Targaryen, wind-tossed hair damp from exertion, cheeks flushed with life. His violet eyes found Jon immediately. Jon lifted Tommen down. The boy, no more than 12, stood trembling, but his chin tipped high. He walked to Aegon, stopped 2 paces off, knelt. For the realm's good, he whispered. I yield my crown. The square fell silent, save gull cry. Aegon dismounted, approached, knelt in turn. He took Tommen's hands. Rise, a prince of Westeros. Serve beside me, and I promise no harm shall come to you or your mother." "Then," Tommen nodded, relief and fear warring. Jon stepped forward, voice carrying. "People of King's Landing, here kneel two kings who choose peace over pride. Let the seven witness their pact." A roar answered. Hope, disbelief, rapture. The bells of the great sept, unshackled from the faith's stranglehold by sympathetic gold cloaks, pealed a joyous cacophony. Across rooftops, small folk waved pale cloth, not in surrender but in welcome. Connington rode up, armor spattered with tallow smoke. "The Red Keep secure?" "For now," Jon said. "We must feed the city, bury the dead, and ready for winter." He surveyed the thinning clouds to the north, gray like wolves' pelts gathering. "The true war marches." Aegon followed his gaze. "Then we ride soon." "After you're crowned," Connington insisted. "After the realm believes," Aegon corrected softly. He clasped Jon's shoulder. "Hand, I'll need wagons, ravens, emissaries to every corner." Jon nodded. "They're yours." At the square's edge, a group of ragged children clustered. Eyes huge, ribs stark beneath rags. Jon knelt, unslung his travel sack, handed cold sausage, a heel of bread, a strip of dried plum to each small hand. One girl, freckles smudged in soot, stared at Ghost. "Is it real?" she gasped. "He is," Jon said. "And he fights for you now." Ghost lowered his massive head, allowing her trembling fingers to brush snow-soft fur. The girl's smile was dawn itself, frail, fleeting, but bright beyond measure. Jon rose, throat tight. If we can keep that smile alive, winter may lose its sting. By midday, ravens spiraled north and south, east and west, bearing scrolls stamped with the combined seals of Aegon Targaryen and Tommen Baratheon, nullifying Cersei's regency, proclaiming the city's surrender, summoning lords to a great council at the harvest feast to forge unity against the darkness. Grain stores seized from hoarders were opened, bakeries roared alive. Connington's men patrolled with bread carts in lieu of cudgels. The Dornish delivered oranges to sickbeds. Atop the Red Keep's highest balcony, the black and red dragon unfurled beside the stag, crowned anew. And below, the city exhaled a trembling, incredulous sigh. Jon worked until nightfall, quill scratching orders, boots pounding corridors, voice hoarse from command and consolation alike. Yet still tasks stretched endless. Cisterns to clean, garrison shifts to plot, plague rumors to quell. Through it all, Aegon stood tireless, hearing grievances, meting swift justice to rapers and looters, spending boy blood to buy king respect. Near midnight, Jon found a moment of stillness upon the tower of the Hand's balcony. King's Landing sprawled under stars, torches tracing the lines of streets now quiet, save for distant gulls. Ghost lay beside him, muzzle upon paws. Davos approached with 2 cups of sour Dornish red. "Thought you might need wetting." He offered a cup. Jon accepted. "Thank you." Davos leaned on the parapet. "Never thought I'd see a day when lion and dragon shared a banner. Winter can forge strange alliances." The older man sipped. "City's calmer than I dared dream. Bread helps. Hope helps more." "Hope won't stop the others," Jon said. "But it may give men courage to face them." Davos studied the night sky. "We truly ride north?" "Within a fortnight," Aegon says. "After the lords arrive and witness Tommen's renunciation with their own eyes, after grain caravans roll, after the sept heals its wounded." Jon inhaled salt and smoke. "Then we ride." Davos nodded. "I'll see ships fresh rigged. We'll need river barges for grain runs to White Harbor lest snow close the roads." Jon clapped his shoulder. "I trust no man more with sails." Thunder rumbled far off. They turned northward. Above the King's Road, a bank of clouds massed. Black, massive, crowned by flickers of silent white lightning. Davos shivered. "Storm's fury." "Winter's," Jon corrected. He drained his cup and set it on the ledge. Below, the city slept uneasy, but alive. One night saved, he told himself. Thousands more to fight for. He crouched, scratched Ghost behind the ear. The direwolf's crimson gaze met his own, ancient and knowing. Together, man and beast stared into the dark horizon where cold winds whispered of armies unseen. The lords arrived. They came in dribs and drabs at first. Sir Parman Crane bearing the broken rose of a shattered reach. Lord Gunser Sunglass under rust-flecked sunburst. Aged Lord Giles Rosby coughing blood onto silk kerchiefs. Each rode up the river gate expecting chaos, and found order in its infancy. Breadlines shortened, markets reopened under watchful crossbows, smithies hammered helms from plowshares. They found Aegon seated in the Queen's ballroom, adjudicating disputes between spice guilds and dock wardens, not from an ivory throne but a plain oak chair borrowed from the kitchens. They found Tommen at his side learning humility one petition at a time. They found Jon Snow at the end of the hall, eyes sharp, direwolf ever near, an unspoken promise that the peace was real but fragile as spun sugar. By the sixth day, the trickle became a flood. The Tyrell bannermen, Hightower, Redwine, Tarley, arrived as a block, gaunt from siege but unbroken. Edmure Tully came escorted by Blackfish archers from the twins' freed dungeons. Even the grim Lord Greatjon Umber's cousin, young Clee, arrived by river skiff, weeks ahead of northern hosts, bearing tidings of dread. Last Hearth's fall confirmed, Carhold besieged by the dead, Hornwood burned black. Jon stood with him at a war table strewn in candles and mapstones. "How many ride?" he asked. "Too many to count," Clay said, voice cracking. "They move at night, rest by day buried in snowbanks. The cold itself is their cloak." Jon closed eyes. "We must march soon." Connington pointed with a draft board peg. 4,000 Golden Company stand ready, plus 2,000 Stormlanders, and such reach levies as remain loyal. We can muster 8,000 in a fortnight. Double that march north once the lords see proof, Jon replied. But supplies matter more than swords. Grain, salted pork, onions. The Reach can spare enough, pledged Lord Hightower. Highgarden's garners still brim. And wagons? Davos asked. Redwine provides ships from the Arbor. We sail grain to White Harbor, meet the host when it passes Moat Cailin. Jon nodded. Good. Aegon's eyes shone, equal parts fervor and fear. And the dragons? Silence fell. There were no dragons, only the rumor of Daenerys far across the narrow sea, marching through Volantene streets with elephants of her own. Jon felt a pang. If she comes, what then? But that was another war, another time. For now, he said, we are the realm's dragons. A murmur of assent followed. Commitments etched upon ledger, seals pressed in wax. Jon watched candles gutter low, thinking of colder fires, the blue eyes in the night. The harvest feast dawned under leaden skies. In the dragon pit's shadow, tables groaned under autumn bounty. Roast aurochs from Crack Claw, honeyed turnips of the Crown Lands, arbor gold flowing like summer memory. Lords toasted fragile unity, septons sang hymns of rebirth. Small folk lined paths to glimpse their young king. When the last hymn faded, Tommen rose before the assembled. His voice shook but held. Lords and ladies, he declared, I, Tommen of houses Baratheon and Lannister, here renounce claim to the Iron Throne. I pledge fealty to Aegon of House Targaryen, sixth of his name, and shall serve as Prince of the Crownlands, protector of my people. Mend and die. He knelt. A chill ripple swept the lords. Shock. Awe, relief. Aegon stepped forward, lifted the boy by both shoulders. Rise, Prince Tommen, he said. In my court your counsel will be treasured. He kissed the boy's brow. Bells rang again, this time not in alarm but jubilant clangor. Cersei watched from a balcony, flanked by silent guards. No irons bound her wrists. Rather, a velvet sash signified polite confinement. She kept her face a mask, yet Jon saw fury burn behind lidded eyes. She would never forgive. He doubted she could forget. but for now she was contained. As the feast wound on, Jon drifted to the dragon pit's edge where cool air blew through shattered arches. There, he found Sansa. His heart jolted. She wore a gown of midnight blue, sewn with tiny white beads like snow in moonlight, auburn hair pinned by a direwolf brooch twin to his own. "Lady Sansa," he breathed. "Lord Hand," she replied, eyes soft. She curtsied. "Or should I say, cousin?" He smiled, weary but warm. "Call me Jon." They stood beside a broken column. Beyond, the sunset painted the Blackwater gold, and in its reflection puffed clouds looked like frozen mountains. Sansa spoke of Winterfell's repairs, how masonry crews from White Harbor raced to raise walls before snow, how the Manderleys offered grain for stone, how Queen Aelys Karstark fortified the Wolfswood paths. She spoke of Arya's travels, Bran's dreams. Jon spoke of the march north, the need for ravens, the fear he felt like second skin. She placed a hand on his arm. "We Starks have stood through dark winters before. We will again. And you will not stand alone." Bendaor. Jon felt the truth of it, like a hearth's warmth after endless night. He breathed easier. Departure day arrived beneath scudding storm clouds. The king's road trembled under hooves and wagon wheels, 8,000 marching, 10,000 bushels, 24 maesters, 300 smiths, 40 barrel wagons of lamp oil, 80 casks of Dornish fire. At the column's head rode Aegon in wolf grey cloak trimmed red. At his side, Jon in black, longclaw slung across back. Tommen rode behind bearing a banner-quartered dragon and crowned stag. Sansa watched from the Mudgate's ramparts beside Davos, who would command the river fleet. Citizens lined the route, placing rushes, thrusting crusts of bread toward riders, crying out prayers half hope, half plea. Among them Jon saw children he had fed, mothers he had calmed, smiths whose forges he had ordered relit. Each shout hammered home the weight upon his shoulders. Outside the southern walls, the host angled west toward the Roserad. The air smelled of churned mud and ripening doom. Jon glanced north. Beyond the far hills, sky boiled black-green, a bruise spreading. A horn sounded thrice, the signal to march. Hooves clattered, drums thumped, banners snapped. Ghost loped ahead, scouting a realm too long bled by pride. Jon squared shoulders. He was hand to a dragon king, son to a wolf lord, shield to a realm skating upon the thinnest ice. They would march until the ice cracked beneath the weight of dead men, then fight amid the shards. But that battle was tomorrow's grim dawn. For now, each step northward rang with possibility. Of unity wrested from chaos, of hope reborn, of a realm's future steered by bastards and boys who refused to break beneath ancient sins. Jon whispered a vow to the biting wind. "For Gren, for Pip, for every name carved in my soul, I'll see this through." Ghost threw back his head, howling to the clouds. The answer rolled from distant peaks, thunder, raw and promising. And so the long march into winter began. Ka. Daylight dwindled faster with each northward mile, as though some unseen hand pinched the wick of the sun the moment the host set hoof to frozen earth. The armies of the young dragon and the wolf-born hand found themselves forever chasing a horizon that fled before them, and soon every campfire burned earlier, every watch was colder, every breath a pale ghost. Autumn seemed to have bled straight into the marrow of winter without bothering to die decently first. They advanced 3 days up the Roserad before the first real gale drove iron nails of sleet through cloaks and boiled leather. Jon broke camp in the violet hush before dawn, the din of smiths already ringing, hammers beating rhythm into cart-worn anvil tops. Blacksmiths from Bitterbridge had ridden hard to meet the column, iron wagons clattering behind them, and now worked side by side with reachermen whose sigils wilted, petals torn by months of siege. Connington insisted on sharpening pike heads. Jon insisted on fitting those pikes with dragon glass caps Samwell Tarly had shipped from Dragonstone by way of Duskendale. Half the smiths cursed the glass, too brittle under a hammer, too stubborn to fit tight. But by candlelight a workaround was found. Copper sleeves heated red, slid over obsidian points, quenched in piss buckets, the metal shrinking into an unbreakable grip. By dawn, 70 pikes shone with glistening black heads that seemed to drink firelight rather than reflect it. Jon checked each batch himself. He knew the horror waiting behind the ice wind better than any man here, save perhaps the Tarly brothers and the handful of knights watched deserters who served in his personal guard. Most had fought at the wall or in the snows of Winterfell, numbers dwindling from wounds, yet their stories carried like sparks on dry tinder. Those stories, more than edicts or banners, lit a fear-filled resolve in fresh soldiers' eyes far faster than threats of discipline. It was one thing to imagine ghouls, quite another to see a scarred ranger lift his tunic and reveal teeth-grooved ribs where a dead man had tried to feed. While the smiths labored and the quartermasters counted barrels of onions, Aegon held an open court beneath a sagging green pavilion stitched hurriedly with black dragons on one side and crowned stags on the other. Bitterbridge smallfolk queued at its flap, cobblers whose winter stock of hides had been trampled when Mace Tyrell's vanguard broke through last harvest, low-born farmers whose frost-brown fields now belonged to bandits sworn to no lord at all. The king listened, gave judgments in a voice still raw with youth, but steel-spined. More than once he called Jon to the dais for quiet counsel. Each time Jon's advice was the same: hold tight to mercy, but tighter to justice. Grain levies imposed on the Caswells became grain payments delivered in person. The bandits were offered amnesty if they chose the dragonglass pits at Dragonstone over pillage. 7 took the offer, 2 spat and were hanged before nightfall. The king watched the hangings without flinching, though he walked apart afterward, shoulders bowed under a twilight sky that burned like smoldering embers in the west. Jon found him there, ghost padded between them, curling at Aegon's feet like an alabaster shadow until the boy, no, the king, slowly scratched behind a snowy ear. "Does it harden you?" Aegon asked. "Each time?" "It scars," Jon answered. "Hardening is something else. Stone does not bleed, but it also does not feel. We must feel, or we are no better than the dead who march." "Then dawa." The king nodded, silent long enough that the wind's lonely whistle filled the space where tears might have gathered. When he finally spoke, his eyes held distant torch flickers. "They will follow you into winter because they believe you've seen its heart. I feel sometimes I carry a sword made of words in a land that only trusts steel." "Mendasai." "Words carve paths steel cannot walk," Jon said, remembering the cave beneath Dragonstone where ancient children's glyphs had promised alliances older than castles. "Keep wielding yours." The fourth morning brought Maidenpool's spires over a gray horizon. Connington rode ahead with 200 Golden Company and 300 Rosby spearmen to hold the docks and coordinate grain loading. Joan's column angled west, skirting the muddy farmlands that had once fed half the crownlands. Gutted cottages lay blackened among dead orchards. Here and there pale bones poked from weeds like the spires of some grim temple. Tommen insisted on pausing to bury any skull left in the open, an act that slowed them but won silent approval from soldiers not yet numb to every horror. At Stonebridge, Garland Tyrell, gaunt but unbowed, arrived with a mixed troop of Reach archers and Crownlander sappers. He carried news hot as mulled wine. A Lacine flotilla had been spotted south of Crackclaw Point flying the 3-headed red dragon of old, and beneath it, the snarling wolf of Stark on a field of gray. Tyrion Lannister, it seemed, had sailed ahead of Daenerys Targaryen, bearing both quartered banners and a letter sealed with the Queen's broken chain sigil. The Lysini claimed to escort envoys rather than armies, just 2 swift cogs bristling more with parchments than scorpions. Their holds bulged with barrels of strange resin, said to burn even upon water. Miracle fire, Garland called it, gift of some archon Tyrion had blackmailed or charmed. No one knew which. Aegon heard the report in silence. Then he looked to Jon. "If she comes behind them, our cause becomes a tapestry of too many threads. Yet perhaps we need every thread now." Jon answered honestly. "If she comes, the long night will not care whose banner wins. I have bled beside wildlings and kneelers both. I'll bleed beside dragons as well." But we must meet them first, and early, before misunderstanding sharpens into swords. Bentrar. 24 horsemen under Bela Blackmont were dispatched south, with letters of safe conduct. They rode under Tommen's stag and Aegon's dragon knotted together, a living braid fluttering in sleet. That night, around a low fire cupped between wagon wheels, Jon reread Sam's latest Raven. The parchment edges curled, a drop of snowmelt smudged ink where Sam had scrawled hard home raised, nothing living found. One dead. An ache squeezed Jon's chest at the giant's name, a tremor of sorrow quickly swallowed by the colder tremor of looming fear. The dead giants would rise taller than castle walls. He folded the message and leaned back against a bale of furs. Snow drifted beyond canvas walls, whispers of the others riding each flake. Ghost dozed with one eye cracked open, a red ember in the dark. Across the wagon circled the smiths still hammered dragonglass pikes, their sparks fading before they touched the frosted earth. In dreams Jon stood again on the wall's icy top, wind screaming like 1,000 widows. Beside him towered Bran in weirwood armor, eyes milky and glowing. Bran lifted a branch. No, a spear of living wood that flowered green despite the frozen air. Below, an army of wights smashed against the stone, and each time Bran thrust the spear, roots burst through ice to shatter skulls of blue crystal. Jon reached for Longclaw but found only ash. He looked down. His hands were weirwood, his flesh ringed in red sap that bled freely. The wall cracked apart, and through its yawning gap thundered a great black stallion, ridden by Lyanna Stark, clad in armor of snow, her banner half wolf, half dragon. The stallion screamed, the dream shattered, and Jon woke before dawn with frost on his beard, though the tent flap was tied shut. He dressed, shivering, and sought the king. Aegon was already awake, bending over a game board of Sevastiles carved from whalebone. Opposite him sat Edric Dane, the youngest of the Starsword line, eyes shadowed by whatever ghosts guarded Starfall. They played in silence, save the scrape of pieces. When Jon entered, the boy lord gently toppled his dragon tile and rose. "Your king wins again," Edric said with a bow. "But the walls of the water gardens hold secrets even dragons dread." With that cryptic farewell, he slipped into the pre-dawn gloom. Aegon sighed. "He beats me more than not, but I learn." Jon nodded. "Play enough. You learn each piece's worth. Same with men. You'll need every rook in its place when winter falls. We'll need more than rooks." Aegon lifted a scroll. "Tarly scouts confirm the Umber lands are ash. No survivors. My hand." How does a man lead others when the path ahead promises only death? "Memdrand." "By promising life," Jon said. "Not comfort, not surety. Life. The chance to see spring on the other side. Some will follow for gold, some for honor, but most for their children's dawn. Keep showing them that dawn and they will march through hell." Aegon touched the wooden dragon tile. "And if dawn fails, then we hold the night together." They turned off the Roserad at Cobb's Cross, trading flat farmland for knotty woods and hill villages smelling of wet straw. 4 days north of Maidenpool, while skirting a wide fen called Appledown Mere, Garland's foraging party vanished. He had ridden at sunset with 50 reach horse and a dozen Crownland bowmen to scour abandoned orchards, reportedly heavy with late apples. They never returned. At dawn bells rang. Jon rode out with Ghost and 200 pikes beneath a half-moon waxing gold. They tracked hoofprints into the orchard's tangled lanes, found carts overturned, apples crushed under hoof like burst hearts. No blood scented the air, yet the horses tethered to trees swayed where they stood, skin pale and eyes glassy, unmoving as statues. When Jon approached, a breeze curled through branches. The horse nearest him lifted its head in a jerky marionette motion and shrieked, a ghastly wet bray that ended with its jaw hanging slack, a shard of broken bit clattering out, frost-rimed hair along its spine despite the relative warmth. The eyes burned ice blue. Jon shouted, brandishing dragonglass dagger. Ghost lunged, seizing the creature's throat. It thrashed once, fell, hooves drumming dirt, until Jon drove black glass through its skull. Around them, other horses twitched into unnatural life. Then shapes stirred among apple trunks. Men of the Reach, white-eyed, gore-slick even in death, pulled themselves from leaf piles, arrows sticking from torsos like farmers' rakes. One wore Garland's mantle, though the knight's famous green gem clasp now glowed swallowed blue. When the white lurched at Jon, he cut it down, but sorrow carved deeper than steel. The battle raged scarcely 10 minutes, dragon glass shattering undead bones, torch oil coursing flames up rotted coats. But by its end 30 living men were dead, 20 more carried fevered bites. They burned comrades and horses alike, beneath boughs still sagging with untouched fruit. Smoke rose between scarlet leaves. The apples dropped one by one into the flames, hissing like whispers. Jon rode back, streaked in blackened soot. Without word he strode to the king's pavilion, laid what remained of Garland's gem clasp before Aegon. The color had gone entirely from the stone. Only a milky frost remained. "Dragonglass kills them," Jon said, voice ruined. "But numbers grow faster than we can chip spears. We need smiths at every crossroads, every holdfast, turning obsidian to warheads." Aegon ran thumb over the clasp. "I'll have Connington send for masons and furnace makers from Tumbleton. Every wagon heading south comes back north loaded with the black glass." Jon nodded. "And the dead ride lighter than men. They cover miles we crawl. We must outpace them. Every delay is a camp of corpses, waiting." That night, bane torches ringed the host like a city of orange stars. The men whispered of roving whites even in dreams. Watchers swore they saw blue sparks glimmer beyond tree lines. Sentries tripled. The sleet eased to an icy drizzle, but hearts froze more solid than any weather. 3 days after Appledown, Baela Blackmont's outriders returned from their Lysine mission, escorting a single cog of white hull, trimmed crimson. From it stepped Tyrion Lannister, swathed in a sable cloak, sewn with silver krakens and turquoise Dothraki horseheads. A curious melange, but one that drew eyes like magnets. His face was thinner than stories described, scarred anew under the left ear, and his hair had grown into wild blonde curls threaded with gray. He bowed low before the king and Tommen in a clearing heavy with tension. Behind him loomed Grey Worm, stoic in polished breastplate that bore faint imprints of dragon's wings. "Your Grace," Tyrion began, and the cold air seemed to warm at his practiced conviviality. "I bring greetings from Daenerys Stormborn, rightful queen of the 7 kingdoms, by blood and conquest, mother of dragons, breaker." Aegon raised a mittened hand. "We know her titles. We know also her purpose. The realm alive, not burning. Speak to that." Tyrion smiled, a cracked lamp catching shadow. "Very well. Her grace sails with fleet enough to shadow the sunset, 3 dragons circling above. She means to land at White Harbor and ride south, but my council convinced her to treat with you first, lest 2 righteous causes clash stupidly while the true enemy gnaws at our toes." "Men?" Jon studied him. "You propose alliance then?" "I propose survival. The greatest trick the dead could play is to let us kill each other." Tyrion's gaze flicked to Tommen. "You have shown more mercy in 1 moon than Cersei managed in 14 years. Let mercy breed sense." Grey Worm spoke for the first time, Valyrian accent sharpening common words. "If dead reach White Harbor before Union, Dragonfire will meet them. But living die in Dragonfire too. My queen prefers fewer burnt allies." Aegon looked to Jon. Jon said, "Tell your queen we ride for Winterfell with every sword we can feed. If she brings dragons, she brings hope. But she must bend her course to unite, not rule first. There may be no throne left to rule." Tyrion inclined his head. "I will send a raven so swift its feathers shall catch ice before ink dries." He paused, eyes narrowing at Jon. "We once shared a wall and a wineskin. I would share another, but I fear winter's cellars are bare." "Then?" Jon allowed a ghost of smile. "Perhaps at Winterfell, when the dawn breaks." "Hold me to that," Tyrion said softly, "for dawn is a fragile thing." Grey Worm saluted with fist to chest. The parley ended. The dwarf and his unsullied guards withdrew to their ship, promising to shadow the host northward by river where current allowed. That evening Jon gathered the captains, Connington, Davos, Bela, Tarly, both brothers. Lyanna Mormont now arrived with 200 grim Bear Islanders, and told them open war with the dead was days away, not weeks. He spoke of Hardhome raised, of white horses at Appledown, of Giant One reanimated. He spoke, too, of the Dragon Queen's potential arrival, of dragons that breathe living fire hot enough to melt blue sorcery. Some lords cheered. Others fretted that 3 dragons could torch armies as easily as whites. Jon answered every fear with the same word: unity. Alone we are embers, he finished, gloved hand resting on Longclaw's pommel. Together we are a forge. A murmur, low and uncertain, rolled like surf in a cave. Then Lyanna Mormont stepped onto a stool to be seen above the table. She lifted her voice, young yet iron-cored. The North remembers the king who lost his head because southern swords were slow to bite. We remember the Wolf King who bled at a Frey feast. But we remember, too, the bastard who fought the dead and gave his life for the living. I would follow Jon Snow through the gates of the 7 hells and back into Moonrise. Any lord too craven to stand beside him may see Bear Island's ships pass them by. Then the wind. Silence shattered into rough cheers. Even Tarly's stern face cracked a reluctant nod. In that moment, Jon felt the tide shift like an ox cart cresting a ridge, slow until it was unstoppable. They reached Moat Cailin under a sky the color of hammered pewter. The ruined First Men fortress jutted out of the bog like a sobering jawbone, its stone teeth moss-slick and broken. Children of the forest glyphs still scarred some walls, though most lay half buried in peat. Here the neck narrowed, and crossing it meant slogging causeway roads barely a horse wide, while swamp mist curled and howled like lost souls. But Davos had done his work. From the west came flat-bottomed river barges loaded high with Manderley grain. From the east, rookeries burst with crows carrying word that White Harbor's fleet escorted Daenerys' armada all the way to Skagos Sound under banners of truce. Snow began to fall in earnest, fat flakes that lay upon cloaks like white moths, and refused to melt. Jon ordered Connington's Golden Company to man the ruined towers, first time Sellswords had held the moat since the Andals. Pikes lined the causeways, dragonglass heads glinting. Fires burned night and day. Scouts reported white packs probing the edges, but turning back at sight of torchlight. Jon knew it would not last. The others tested, always, until a weakness showed. On the 4th night, a raven arrived with Bran's seal. Wax pressed with a weirwood sad face. The parchment was thin as fear, words sparse. They crossed the last river now. Umber shadows march behind them. Seek the crypt, when the sky turns pale green. For there the dead king will fall, or dawn will fade forever. B. Jon read it thrice. He felt the hidden tremor of Raven's wings brushing his spine, and knew the meaning. Pale green sky. Auroras often dance just before true winter storms. The crypt. Winterfell. The dead king? Night King? He folded the letter slowly. Aegon watched him. We ride to Winterfell. Jon nodded. We ride like wildfires on our heels. Snow thickened into a relentless hush. The neck's reeds froze, snapped under boots like brittle bones. Yet the host pressed forward. Every wagon groaned beneath salt pork and onions. Every smith hammered through numb fingers. Every soldier took the nightly watch with dread weighted by 2 cloaks and 3 hopes. Somewhere beyond blizzard horizons, dragons beat wings, and giants of ice trudged. One dusk, as banners dipped beneath the shadow of the fist of First Men, Tommen rode beside Jon. The boy traced frost on his gauntlet. Do you think Mother still hates me? Jon considered. Your mother fears losing what little she has left. Fear often dresses itself in hate, but hearts can thaw. Tommen nodded, uncertain. Will mine? It already has, Jon said, remembering the slap in the throne room and how the boy had stood again for mercy. You chose the realm. Hold fast to that choice, no matter how cold things become. Tommen's breath puffed mist. I wish I were brave as you. I once wished the same. Bravery grows in moments. Jon looked ahead to where torches flickered against swirling snow. When the moment comes, it finds you. 2 days south of Winterfell, dawn broke sickly green, an eerie glow that shimmered across the low clouds like serpent scales. Wind keened through dead branches, and Ghost's fur rose along his spine. Jon stopped the column atop a low ridge. Below, the King's Road ran straight as a spear toward gray battlements barely visible through sheets of snow. In the half-light, Jon's heart hammered. Bran's vision, pale green sky. The crypt. He turned to Aegon. We leave the host here. Take the vanguard north at speed. 3,000 horse, the fastest infantry on muleback. You hold the main force. Aegon protested. Jon shook his head. If the Night King comes, speed matters, numbers slow. Bring the dragons when they arrive. Until then, I ride ahead. Then I ride with you, the king said. No. Jon's voice cracked frost. If Winterfell falls, the realm still needs a king to rally. We don't risk everything on one throw. Aegon stared, jaw tight, then gave a single nod. Go then, hand of the king. Bring dawn. Lyanna Mormont flicked reins, signaling her bears. Tarly's brother Dickon urged his black charger forward, despite terror glazed across eyes. Tommen tried to follow, but Davos intercepted with gentle firmness. Within half an hour, Jon's vanguard broke from the main host, pounding packed snow into white spray. Ghost led, a pale streak against gloom, his howl shredding dawn's brittle hush. They rode without pause, daylight shrinking beneath clouds veined green. Snow whipped sideways, stinging eyes, icing bridles. Miles blurred beneath hooves until Winterfell's towers rose, dark against aurora, banners still flying, torches dotting ramparts. Yet the main gate stood open like a black wound. Jon's stomach nodded. He raised gloved fist. The column slowed to trot through drifting scree of snow. No horns sounded from walls, no guards hailed them. The massive oak doors hung askew, innards splintered, hinges twisted. Lyanna cursed softly. If they've taken the castle, we take it back, Jon growled. But fear gnawed. They entered the outer ward. Snow lay undisturbed, save for their own hoofprints. Stables stood silent, windows shuttered and rhymed. The world smelled of frost and something colder. Emptiness bathed in old stone. No ravens cried. No voices. Jon dismounted before the great hall. The door stood ajar, a lone wolfskin cloak snagged on its iron handle. He touched the fabric. Still warm? Impossible. He gestured, and 2 Mormont bowmen flanked him as he pushed inside. Longclaw sang free, its faint gleam mirroring the wan emerald glow seeping through high windows. The hall was empty, except for candles guttering low on trestle tables, half set for supper. Plates of congealed stew, loaves torn mid-slice, cups half drunk. Chairs lay toppled, as if diners had risen all at once. Jon's throat tightened. He remembered Craster's keep after the White had come. Bloodless, breathless air heavy with dread. Lyanna pointed. Look. In the corner, old Maester Walken slumped against the wall, gray head bowed. Jon rushed, knelt. The Maester's skin was pale, lips blue. Yet a faint wisp of breath hung in the cold. Alive. Jon shook him gently, eyelids fluttered. Lord Snow. Walken's whisper rasped. They took them below. The prince. The girl with many faces. Bran, down, crypt. Jon's pulse roared. He rose, issued sharp commands. Bowmen posted at every entry. Dragging glass arrows, knocked, died. Then he sprinted, boots hammering stone corridors, now glazed in frost, down spiral stairs into the dim of the crypt. The air grew colder with each step. The walls wept fine ice threads. Torches deadened, flames shrinking blue. He reached the final landing and felt, rather than saw, the presence. A vast wrongness like standing on the edge of some cliff under a starless void. Statues of stark lords lined the passage, granite faces cloaked in rime. At the far end, before Lyanna Stark's carved effigy, stood a tall figure in armor of obsidian ice, crown of frost branching like antlers of black glass. Eyes blazed cerulean, twin moons in endless night. In its grasp, Bran Stark, limp in arms frozen unto him. Next to Bran knelt Arya Stark, bladed of Valyrian steel, clutched though her muscles quivered at the cusp of shattering cold. She met Jon's gaze, teeth bared, yet she could not move. Feet rhymed to floor. Jon stepped forward. Every breath stabbed his lungs. Ghost padded stiff-legged, fur spiked with frost. Snarled drowned by the hum of unnatural silence. The Night King turned. There was no malice on its face, only the void conveyed by a glacier, patient and inevitable. Bran's eyelids flickered, a faint smile almost serene. Then Bran spoke, not with cheeks or lips, but with a voice that filled Jon's mind like thunder multiplied. "Here, the wheel breaks or the sun dies." Jon raised Longclaw. "Let the boy go." No answer. Instead, the Night King extended free hand, palm open. It wanted something. Bran's eyes opened fully, pale, distant. His real voice escaped cracked lips. "He wants the dagger, Jon, the one the children made for the last agreement." Arya hissed through chattering teeth. "Don't you dare." Jon's hand went to his belt where dragonglass dagger sheathed. Its black surface shimmered green in the eerie light, veins of faint red like frozen fire beneath volcanic glass. He drew it slowly. The Night King watched. No, waited. Bran murmured, "Give it, and he leaves me. Refuse, and he takes us all." Jon's mind raced. The dagger forged in the cave. Leaf of weirwood at crosspiece. Ancient runes along edges. Sam believed it key. Children's gift to first men, a contract in crystal. If the Night King wanted it, perhaps to destroy it, perhaps to use it. Arya shook her head violently. Tears froze across lashes. Jon, think. Jon did think. Of dreams of weirwood flesh. Of Lyanna on the black stallion. Of green sky and dawn still hidden. He reversed dagger, held it by blade. "No," he said. "We forge a new pact, not surrender an old one." He slashed his palm. Blood welled bright red. He let droplets fall onto dragonglass. The glass hissed, steam curling. Then he hurled the dagger at the Night King's feet, blood sizzling on stone. "Take my pledge instead," he said. "Take the promise of my life, for every life in this castle. Fight me. End this between us." The Night King stared. Blue eyes flicked to the dagger, then to Jon's bleeding hand. It tilted head, an imitation of curiosity stolen from corpses' memories. Slowly it lowered Bran to Arya's trembling arms. Then it stepped across the rune blade, leaving it where it lay, ice crystallizing blood to ruby shards. With deliberate grace it drew from its own belt a sword of glimmering dark ice. Arya gasped. Bran's voice in Jon's mind whispered, "The choice is made." Jon exhaled steam. He advanced. Steel met sorcery. Longclaw struck the ice sword. Sparks of frost and ashen fire erupting. The clash boomed in the narrow crypt, statues shuddering dust. Jon pressed, but the Night King moved with impossible speed, parrying, riposting. Every blow shivered Jon's bones. He ducked a spinning cut, answered with upward slice that chipped the ice blade into glittering slivers, only for it to reform. Whole, gleaming. The dagger lay between them. Ghost darted, seizing it in jaws. The Night King backhanded the direwolf aside, sending him skidding against Rickon Stark's statue with a whimper. Rage swelled in Jon. He drove forward, hammering blow after blow, forcing the enemy toward Lyanna's tomb. Stone cracked underfoot, frost swirling like smoke. Above, a rumble shook the earth. Distant yet growing. Dragon wings? Or the host's drums? Jon dared not glance away. The Night King thrust. Longclaw turned aside just in time, but ice-kissed armor, freezing chain links together. Jon staggered. Another thrust. He pivoted, letting momentum carry him past. He raised sword, aimed at the enemy's spine. But the Night King vanished in shimmer of snow, reappearing behind Jon, blade descending. A blur, Arya, freed from ice as Jon's blood had broken spell, hurled herself forward, Valyrian dagger glinting. It struck the Night King's shoulder, scoring deep. Blue flame burst outward, hurling Arya back. The wound did not close, yet neither did the creature flinch. Jon zeitzt moment. He plunged Longclaw through the gash Arya's blade left. Steel met something within colder than void. A scream ripped the crypt, high and alien, as cracks of light fissured the Night King's torso. Jon wrenched blade upward, splitting chest to crown. In a heartbeat the body shattered, ice shards exploding in whirlwind. Frost whirlwind roared down corridor, extinguishing torches, then collapsed into stillness. Only silence remained. Silence and snow dust drifting like ash. Jon zagged to knees. Arya crawled to him, arms wrapping. Ghost limped over, licking Jon's cheek. Bran lay against Lyanna's statue, eyes closing in relief, a tear tracking down hollow cheek. Footsteps thundered on stairs. Lyanna Mormont burst with guards, torches flaring crimson. They saw shattered ice, Jon blood-slicked, and storms of breath filled the air. Jon rose, wearily. "It's done." But Bran's soft voice countered, "Not done. The dead armies still move, but their mind is broken. They will falter." Jon wiped blade on cloak. "Then we hunt what remains." He looked at Arya. She nodded, fierce light in gray eyes. Dawn bled gold across the sky scrubbed free of green. Word flew as swift as gust. The Night King slain beneath Winterfell, by wolf and girl and sword of kings. When Aegon arrived with the main host at midday, dragons overhead roaring in salute, he found a castle uncaptured yet forever changed. Walls frosted, hearts thawed to wonder. Daenerys dragons wheeled above, called by some gravitation of fate. She herself alighted in the Godswood hours later, snow melting where dragonfire had brushed. Aegon and Daenerys met beneath the heart trees flaking red leaves, Jon between them. There they bound what remained of their claims in an oath sworn over shattered dragon glass. An oath that promised 3 rulers for one realm, until the sun set on winter forever. And when the first true sunrise of peace climbed the eastern sky, crimson and defiant, it gleamed off a new sigil hoisted high atop Winterfell's broken rampart. A direwolf and dragon twined around a great sword of dawn, its hilt bound in scarlet leaves. Beneath, the words newly carved. In life, unity, die. In death, dawn. Jon watched the banner flutter, wind tugging at frayed edges. Children laughed in the yard, building snowmen that would never rise again. Ghost settled at his heel, peace finally soft in crimson eyes. He turned toward the crypt steps. Work remained, graves to seal, vows to honor, songs to write for those lost. Yet the cold no longer pierced quite so deep, for beyond it, he sensed the world's steady heartbeat returning, frost melting at its edges. Spring would come, not today, not tomorrow, but someday, because men, women, wolves, and dragons had chosen to stand upon the nigh point of night and refuse to fall. And that choice, Jon knew, would echo in every dawn the realm would ever know.